Okay, it's Thursday, which means, cold drink going, video uploading, dogs settle in their spots, half decent fun t shirt, and, well, it's Arizona, so it's hot. But, we do what we can. And with this, we're getting to the, oh gosh, second to last video of high school. Good news, it's almost over in terms of that. Um, but we have a prom to get to next video. But this actually is a bittersweet one. It's the last choir concert. And it may be dorky, but if you know, you know. That can be pretty devastating for a choir kid. Especially when music means so much to you and you base a lot of things around it. And for me, I got to meet all of the coolest people through it. So here we go. I'm gonna get dressed for success, shaping me up for the big time, baby. This is really happening, I told Adrian on the phone one night as we talked. That's all the flight information Meg has for us. You'll be flying standby into town on Thursday and out on Sunday, but Corey is picking you up when you land. I've picked out my dress. It's pure pink on top and then transitions to pure white on the bottom. I have a white cover, Adrian told me. And I have the okay to bring you to school on Friday, so Corey and Meg they'll be with you for the first half, and then at lunch you will get traded off to me for the rest of the day, I said. How'd you get that worked out, she asked. In a post-Columbine world of lockdowns, getting Adrian to come out onto the school was going to take a vice principal's okay. Our VP was pretty strict, notorious for her rants of no vertical sex at school dances, but she also knew me as the guy who was always setting up sound and risers for choir concerts and helping with assemblies when asked. So when I approached her, I explained I was going to bring Adrian, that she was a former student of the school. I was doing this so friends and faculty she knew could see her, just in case they weren't going to be at prom. Well, she asked if you were a visiting student from another school looking to come here, and I told her no. I said, she said we would only really allow it in those circumstances, and she would need to have an escort student from here, and teachers have to be okay with it. And I told her that was done, and, well, I mean, if she said no, I was still going to bring you. Matt, Adrian said, even though I could hear her maybe put her head in her hands. Listen, I told her how important this was, and she said fine. She signed off on the permission slip. I cleared it with my teachers, but Werner doesn't know you're coming, so you'll have to surprise him too. You are something, she said. Oh, I'm a lot of things. I'm a dork, an asshole, an idiot, I started and then laughed. I'm going to get some stuff tonight, but I'll see you in about a week. Go. Yes, you will, she exclaimed, and we hung up. Knowing Adrian's color palette for prom, the next step in gearing up for the dance was underway. I ordered her corsage, and Meg and Cody showed up at my apartment. We were off to the mall. I went over what Adrian told me of her dress, and Meg nodded. Do you have an idea? She asked. I don't want to do white, I said. What about red? Cody asked. Black and red might make me look a little bit like the devil, I replied, so maybe we won't rule that out. When we arrived at the mall, Meg and Cody had a few things to look for their prom attire, so we spent time looking for shoes and ties, going from store to store. We stopped at the food court to grab a drink and a bite to eat, and Cody and I made small talk. He asked how I'd known Adrian, and I explained the sleepover, the letter writing, and the phone calls. Oh, so you had a crush on her, he said with a matter-of-fact grin. Sure, and she moved, I responded, but that's not what this is. It's not playing out a what if I got it, Cody said, nodding. But if given the opportunity? Not what it is, I reiterated with a smile. I think it's great, Meg added as we cleared the table. All right, boys, let's keep going. We continued our hunt, and after finding a series of options for me and a few for Cody, the runway show began. After Cody got squared away with his outfit, with feedback from Meg and I, it was my turn. Finding a pair of dress pants was easy, as was a suit jacket that paired nicely with it. With a handful of shirts to try on, I was a merry-go-round of clothing options. I didn't want to do white or green. All black was a little much. We did a dark and a bright red, and while nice, still not a winner. Purple or even a shade of pink? Meg asked. I'd be up to trying, I said. Cody picked up a few options. I tried them on, but both shook their heads. After a few more tries, we'd found some blue. And I slipped on a shirt that was a lighter blue and almost grayish color, and as I put it on and buttoned it up, slipped the dress pants on. I stepped out and noticed Cody and Meg's reaction. Cody gave me a nod, and Meg's face grew into a warm smile. That's it, Cody said. It's perfect, Meg said, handing me a darker, richer blue tie, which I put on. Oh, that brings out your eyes. All right, then, this'll do it, I said. Thanks for coming out and helping. Anytime, Cody said. Seriously. After making our purchases, we headed out to Meg's car. Cody climbing into the passenger seat, me into the back middle. We pulled out of the parking lot and got on the road back to Ahwatukee, and Cody began to give me some playful advice. Now, Matt, listen, I know you are saying that this is all friendly, but we should probably have you plan for any scenario, he said. So if things are going well, do you plan on, kissing her? What? I asked. Cody, it's not like that. I know, you've said, he added with a grin, but if it were to happen, if things were to, you know what to do with your mouth, right? I tried to begin my retort, but was cut off. Let me speak with experience. Matt doesn't need any pointers on what to do with his mouth with a girl, Meg chimed in. Trust me. Cody went silent. My jaw dropped, and I caught Meg's eye as she looked in her rearview mirror, and I could see her smile as she winked at me. Tryouts. Have you ever seen that movie Rudy? With Sean Astin as the underdog college football player at Notre Dame. So that movie makes me ugly cry every time I watch it. Anyway, the week of our Pops concert, rehearsals were on stage on risers with microphones and sound checks. Downbeat would be doing a selection of jazz. Somewhere Over the Rainbow, I've Got the World on a String, and the finale of I'll Be Seeing You had all been decided. Brandon A. tried out and got the solo for I'll Be Seeing You, and it came down to the final song of our set, which Wendy was working out solos. We'd all taken turns with the solo options, one male and one female, and it was abundantly clear to all of us that Shell would be taking the second solo, the female one, for Bridge Over Troubled Water. She'd blown it away with her powerful gospel voice every single time. As we readied for the guys to try out, Wendy asked for a volunteer to go first. I'll do it, I said, raising my hand. And so I did. I wanted the solo, but also I wanted to get auditioning for it out of the way. The classic friendship song by Simon and Garfunkel. The second verse would be the first solo, with the ladies singing as backup to the male solo, much like the guys would do for Shell in the second. Like all the other guys, I'd done the solo in practice, but I sang it more to the original version than the jazz arrangement of it. And once I finished, I stepped back into our horseshoe setup. We stood on the stage for performing. Okay, thanks, Matt, Wendy said from the piano. All right, next guy. Seniors first. Xandar. Xandar shook his head. No thank you, I'm not going against my brother. Fine. Stephen, Wendy called out. I like how Matt sang it, Stephen said, and I turned to him, raising an eyebrow. Okay, but how about you? Wendy responded. Stephen shook his head. Brandon A. I've got I'll Be Seeing You, and I agree with Stephen, he said. I looked at them, both these two superiorly talented guys. Either one deserved the solo. Any of the guys deserved it. I'd like to hear from someone other than Matt, Wendy said. David shook his head. And the Brandons. And Corey. To a man. Every guy in Downbeat turned down the solo. All I could whisper was, "What are you doing?" And then it hit me. Rudy. When he wasn't given the chance to dress for the final game. After 4 years of doing all he could for the program, the team rallied around him. Teammate after teammate walked into the head coach's office laying down their jersey. "Let him dress in my place, coach," they said. I looked around, and I could see everyone looking at me. I glanced at Steven and Brandon and Zan and the guys, then across to the ladies, and was met with smiles forming on the face of my choir family. They wanted to give me the chance in my final game to take the field. "Okay then, Matt, it's yours," Wendy said, and they clapped. Damn movie. Always makes me ugly cry. Just when things went right, it doesn't mean they were always wrong. May 2nd, 2002. The first night of the Pops concert was the night also that Adrian came back into town. Originally, the plan was for Corey and Meg to pick her up from the airport, but Meg and I were performing. With Meg and I unable to get Adrian, Corey was then in charge of picking her up and was going to bring her to the school for us to see her after the concert. As the choir readied for the concert, my mind was occupied with hoping pickup at the airport went well, running tech in the backstage area for the concert, and hoping everything worked out for our unrecorded night. Much like the year before, the second night of Pops concert would be recorded, and acts were a bit more reserved the first night. It's also where I feel like I need to address a part of the concert, and that is a cappella. A cappella traditionally closed the show, and we did that for this Pops concert. But the a cappella set for this Pops concert is one that even at the time the choir wasn't exactly all in favor for. We were doing a set entitled Latin Fever with songs like Too Hot to Samba and Smooth. That was the hit by Santana and Rob Thomas at the time, and I had a dance partner in Tivoli. But we were also doing Mambo No. 5, and that song is where, a bit of the problem lies. Wendy had made the creative decision that the names in the song would be replaced by the names of the women in a cappella, and the guys would be singing the song, and it was awkward as fuck. Even then, all the guys would amongst themselves talk about it. It all seemed to not work. Not because we didn't want to showcase the ladies, but because this just didn't seem like an appropriate way to do it. We sang it as directed, but it just soured the entire experience, the entire musical number of that song, and then by its integration with the rest of the set, the entire a cappella part of the show. Even now, when I've had it brought up with choir friends, we meet it with eye rolls. It is why, even if not chronologically correct, I consider my singing with Downbeat on night 2 of Pops concert to be the last time I performed in the Mountain Point Choir. Adrian and Corey had arrived a little after intermission, and Shantae had finished performing. Meg, done performing for the night, had ducked out into the auditorium lobby to see her, and as I stood backstage working tech, Meg suddenly appeared backstage. She'd cut through the choir room and dressing room to find me, and with my tech duties and still needing to perform with a cappella, I hadn't gotten a chance to get out. She walked up as I finished setting up the next act and tapped me on the back. I turned to her, and a huge smile on her face, and she took my arm with excitement. "It's Adrian, Matt. She's really here. It's her," she said excitedly. She looks so good. Oh my God." I instantly felt nervous. I hoped she'd be here," I said. While I was still trying to stay in techie mode, I could feel butterflies in my stomach. I don't know why I was nervous, I just was. My nerdy plan, my sophomore year promise had worked, and I was a nervous wreck. But looking at Meg and how happy she was put a bit of that at ease. "You did it," she said, hugging me. "You're amazing. Thanks for doing this." "We did it. Thanks for helping," I said, grinning. "And your mom. I'm glad we did it." "She's out in the lobby with Corey, so she'll be there when the concert's over," Meg added. "I'll try and make sure to get a few people out there to see her." As the concert ended, Zan, Putman, myself, and the rest of the tech crew took to the stage to break it down, while parents and friends in the audience congratulated members of the choir on a successful first night. As the auditorium began to clear and those of us in choir started filing out, Meg had finally been able to get a group together for a few of us in the audience that would have known Adrian and had us meet out in the lobby. Out there in that beloved performing arts lobby, Adrian stood beside a pillar with Corey. I headed through the auditorium doors and leaned up against the wall out of the way. And the first voice I heard was Emily. Or more accurately, the first thing I heard was Emily scream. "Adrian!" she said in surprise, running up to her. Emily and Adrian hugged. Kate walked up to say hi, and others surrounded Adrian, excited chatter filling the air. Meg stood next to me for a few moments, then grinned, gave me a quick nudge in the shoulder, and I smiled back. Meg walked up and hugged Adrian again. I leaned against the wall, taking in the visual, watching my friends reunited and the nervousness I'd been feeling backstage had dissipated. I caught Corey's eye, and she kept excitingly waving me over. Once everyone got their hugs in, I could overhear a little bit of the conversation. "Wait, why are you here? How are you here?" came a question. "I'm here for prom," she responded. "Matt asked me to be his date, and he brought me out." I could see people looking around, and Adrian and I made eye contact. I remember leaning up against the wall, hands in my pockets, and a smirk. Per Adrian, my pose, she remembered. I pushed off the wall and took a deep breath and walked up. The sea of friends kind of parting a little bit. It felt surreal seeing Adrian for the first time in over 2 years. "Hey, go," was all I could say. Maybe even all I needed to say. I don't remember if she ran, but I can remember the force of the hug Adrian gave me. She wrapped her arms around my neck, and time stood still for a bit as we hugged. Those years apart had been challenging and far too long, and everything else vanished. "Welcome home," I whispered. The next day, Meg and Corey brought Adrian to the school and took her to band and orchestra, surprising friends there and Mr. Werner. During a break between downbeat and a cappella, I was caught by Mr. Werner in the hallway, and he motioned me aside. "Matt," he said in a low voice. "Yes?" I asked, felt shocked that his usual address to me had been eschewed for my actual name. It felt weird. "I was told you orchestrated this surprise," he continued. I nodded, and he smiled. Not the cartoony evil smile I'd seen in the past. "Well done, and thank you." "Oh, yeah, of course," I said as he walked away. Everything was going according to plan. Everyone was so excited to see her as she went and saw her friends in band and orchestra and through classes with Meg in the morning. But one person missed out on the reunion in the morning and was also one of the people I had specifically done this for. Aaron hadn't seen Adrian yet, and as Meg, Adrian, and I planned to meet up before lunch, I caught Aaron in the hallway. I begged her to stop walking and told her I had something to show her. "I don't have a lot of time. I have to get going," she said. "I know, but just humor me for 1 second, I asked. With a slight huff, she agreed and turned down the hallway. Adrian stood at the other end, and I could see her smile at Aaron, and it took a second for it to register on Aaron's face. But I couldn't help but laugh when I I saw her jaw drop. The absolute scream she let out, followed by her throwing her backpack at me as she ran, sprinting down the hall to hug Adrian, I will never forget. Ina, oh my god, I miss you so much. What are you doing here? How are you here? She screamed. I'm Matt's prom date, Adrian responded. They walked arm in arm back to me, and Erin gave me one of her well-known best ever hugs. Since we were headed to lunch and she was walking to her next class, we walked her there, and Erin was late but didn't care. After lunch, Adrian joined me in creative writing, and since we were wrapping up screenplays and had such flexibility in the class, she was able to spend time catching up with Kate and Emily to reunite with Kelly, and Kelly and Adrian traded some laughs as they had the commonality of being my dates to dances that year. I had no interest in interjecting in any of the conversation. I just liked seeing everybody smile. It worked. I thought to myself, shaking my head with a bit of surprise. It had all worked so perfectly. After school and before Pops concert, Adrian came over to my apartment. Got to see my parents and Sarah, and we hung out in my room. We listened to music and talked. But really, the important thing there was time. For her and me. Sharing her with friends throughout the day was wonderful. But the few hours we had to just us was a reminder to how much I missed her, and how good it was to have her back. As we readied for the second performance of Pops, and prom being the next day, Adrian, Erin, and Corey were coming to Pops concert to see us all in our final choir concert. And in the program, all the seniors were given the opportunity to write a short dedication. And I made sure to include Adrian so she could see it. And a step to the right. Zan Putman and I were joined by Crystal, David, Corey, Desta, Stephen C., and others as the final tech crew for the show, and we had stuck with the same assignments we'd done the night before with a little bit of a change. It was decided that after intermission, I would be done with any tech duty needs. After years of being the first one there, and usually the last to leave, I would get to watch the second half of Pops from the audience if I wanted. I chose to remain backstage. Before the concert began, as customary, I walked onto the stage, looking out into the mostly empty seats. Except for maybe a few other choir members or tech crew, I could see and feel the end was coming. That wonderful constant that is time. The best way to put it is there were ghosts there at that moment, but I wasn't haunted. It was the ghost of memories, of everything that auditorium meant to me throughout the years, taking the stage for the first time with a group of people who over the years would become friends and family. That how a decision made in the front office a week before my freshman year had all come down to this. I could sense the memory of Jack there, the sailor who leapt into the air and away from being a wallflower. Of teaming up with Blaine for the first time. It was Christmas concerts and carols, madrigals and Java jive. It was getting to be a part of Ludwig's final year and Wendy's first. It was gearing up for tours and building relationships with band and orchestra and wanting to bring eyes to the performing arts hallway. It was the guiding light of Diana and evil scientist laughs with Laura. It was country music nights and nights out with Pam and Katie and low notes with David and Xandar. I remembered Becky and Jessica and wrestling nights at a sports bar, Kiki and her guard spider, and a concert tape, and Annie with flash dance. It was Brian being a rock star, Shell being a force of nature, and all the Brandons and Stevens being so insanely talented. It was singing Elton John, and Meg joining the choir. It was Emily and Kate singing Sound of Silence, and then goofing it up with me to Love Shack. It was seeing who would be there after I left. Putman, Andrea, Francesca, Jackie, Kelsey, Sarah, and Ashley. I looked at David and Corey and the rest of the underclassmen who were now taking over tech duties and would take the choir way beyond what I would leave it. It was realizing I was the longest ever serving member to that point of Downbeat. It was being proud of what I'd done, of who I'd become and the people I met. It was love. And it was knowing that in the end, time will always win. I stood on that stage before a concert for one final time. I smiled and I took a deep breath. I couldn't beat time, but I could warp it. It's just a jump to the left, I said, hopping into the air. And a step to the right. Another voice. I turned, confused. Sarah was there, and she stuck her right foot out. Put your hands on your hips, Putman. And bring your knees in tight, Xandar. But it's the pelvic thrust, Ashley called out, jutting out her hips. That really drives them insane, I laughed. Let's do the time warp again, a series of voices, both on stage and off, called out. Showtime. I'm on your side when times get rough. Pops Concert began with men's chorus doing the national anthem, and they were followed by the all-girl encore choir doing a series of 70s disco hits. After singing a medley that consisted in part of Hot Stuff, I Will Survive, and Physical, the first of the auditioned acts took the stage. David, John, Brandon B., and Maddie performed a song called 5 Long Years, and Danielle followed up with Save the Best for Last. Before the men's chorus returned to do the medley of the Temptations, I got the honor of doing one of the final things I would do as a tech member for choir. Emily had auditioned Woman Be Wise, and I set up her microphone and mic stand before she went out. We exchanged smiles in passing, and her soulful voice carried through the auditorium. I watched and listened, leaning up against the wall, still mesmerized, applauding as soon as she was finished. A few more acts would follow, and Downbeat members who weren't part of the tech crew began making their way backstage. We would stand together, whispering to each other, and Shell and I gave each other pep talks before leading up to our solos. Madam President, I whispered, shall we give them something to remember? You know it, Mr. President, she smiled back. It's been an honor, I said. I feel the same way, she returned. As an auditioned act of my best friend's wedding ended, Downbeat all lined up and walked on the stage together, into our horseshoe formation, and took our mics. Wendy stood off to the side, and as the applause died down, the opening chord for our first song was played, and we held it for a few seconds, and as one we began. I'll be your bridge or troubled water when you're down. As we sang the first verse together on the recording, one of the humorous points is that the audience just had a hard time clapping in the right rhythm. But that never mattered to us. We were all in sync with each other, and as the band came in, we added more volume not to be drowned out. As we ended our second run of the chorus, I stepped out and to center stage, to calls from my friends behind me. Sing it, boy, Stephen and Shell said. Unlike the first night, when I stepped out, the first thing I did was turn to face the choir, my friends, my family. I gave Zan a grin and motioned to the choir. Then I looked right at Emily and Kate and then pointed. This was for them. When I looked to the crowd, I only needed to glance this time, finding Meg, Adrian, Corey, and Aaron immediately. When you're down and out, when you're on the street. And then I glanced at Wendy. When evening falls so hard, I will comfort you. I'll take your part. Oh, when darkness comes and pain is all around. The choir joined in on the chorus, and as my solo came to an end, I still had a line to sing. That nerd with a hero complex who cannonballed into love and who hoped he could prove it someday. I will lay me down. There's some applause. And then Shell comes out and blows the roof off the place with her gospel voice. The crowd erupts for her, and it's goosebumps inducing to hear it on the recording. As we finished the song, it all felt complete, and we all traded smiles between us. Wendy stepped out, acknowledging first Shell and then me, and there's this small swell of crowd cheering and even a collective "Go, Matt!" that sounded like a very few distinct female voices that I knew. We had 2 more follow-ups, neither had solos, but we did Somewhere Over the Rainbow and I've Got the World on a String. With the ending of the latter, the crowd applauded again. There was movement from the majority of Downbeat as we moved across the stage. And Wendy walked from behind the piano into the front center of the stage in front of us. Then, the tech crew came out, and they brought with them the Stools. Jackie stood behind Kate and Emily. Maddie behind Shell. Stephen and Brandon A. sat next to each other, David behind them. Putman came out. Our brother. And he put down Xandar's stool. With a smile, I watched my brother sit. And then, Putman put down mine. I'll be looking at the moon, but I'll be seeing you. I looked at Zan, over at Kate and Emily, and it hadn't registered yet. Not until that moment, and I looked at Wendy as she spoke some words. As I got ready to sing, she locked eyes with me and had already begun to tear up. 3 years and downbeats, tours, NAU, singing gigs, choir council meetings, talks before and after school, the arguments and keys being tossed to unlocked doors. The boss and the kid. Oh no, I whispered. Wendy smiled and nodded to the stool. She knew, and so did I. We weren't ready to go. I sat on the stool and everything went quiet. The ladies began the song and the guys joined in a few lines later. By the time we began to sing the lines in that small cafe, Wendy had already begun to cry, and so had a few of the ladies. When Brandon began his solo, Zan and I sang those low, familiar notes that I remembered for years. I looked down the line and I could see the tears and I could see the downbeat seniors that came before in my memory. And Xandar, Emily, Kate, Shell, Stephen, and Brandon with them. And me. The end note hit it. You have to. You always have. It's your job. That voice in my head urged me. As we sang, I'll be looking at the moon, I felt a hand on my shoulder. My heart cracked, but it held, and I could see Emily's face give a little. When the lady sang there, but I'll be seeing you, I could pick out Emily and Kate's voices. We all sang the final, I'll be seeing you. And Xandar and I hit that low bass note together. My final note. Once I did, my heart broke, and I broke down with it, weeping on stage. My body shuddered as I did, and Xandar wrapped an arm around me. I leaned into my brother, and I could feel other arms around me, and the crowd stood in applause. Before intermission, the choir boosters thanked Wendy for her years, and afterward, Downbeat as a whole went backstage, Wendy following right behind us. I was fine. I was fine. Some of you started to cry, and it was fine, and I wasn't going to let it get to me, but, Stephen said, then pointed at me. Then you had to go and do it, and I couldn't hold it back anymore. There were murmurs of agreement and laughter from Downbeat and Wendy, and I shrugged, laughing with them. Sorry about that. Don't be, he returned, and we exchanged a hug. For nearly the entirety of intermission, Downbeat stood backstage hugging each other, and the final ones I had to give out were for Zan, Kate, and Emily, and Wendy. When we finally did come out, I saw my parents and Emily's standing at their seats. You okay, kid? Dad asked, and I nodded. When you turned to the choir and pointed at Emily, Mary Ann started. Matt, it was great, my mom added. Before intermission ended, I climbed back on stage and began clearing the stools, wanting to do it myself. I picked up mine last, sighed, and wiped a tear from my face. My time in choir was over. It was the coolest thing that brought the coolest people into my life. And I will always have a little bit of jealousy for kids who got into music after like Glee became a thing, because man, they all started to get to sing the songs I wish I was singing in choir. But the coolest people that I ever got to meet outside of my wife, I got to meet through the choir program in high school. Like, yes, I made friends throughout the rest of my life, but that was a core group that I share so many laughs and memories into my roles with, and it all came from that. And now it's over. But maybe, just maybe, I've still got a little bit of adventure left in me. Because guess what? It's prom. And I've got a date. But until then, turn on some music. Be good to yourself. Keep on rolling. I'll be seeing you